Mammoth machines.
It's kind of amazing pushing 20 tons of trash.
Trash piled 20 stories high.
I was a little too close to the edge and I couldn't stop. I knew I was going down.
Man and technology in a battle against a tidal wave of waste.
It's a football field-sized area that's got to be buried every single day.
Uncover the gargantuan world of garbage at America's mega dump. Garbage. We all make it, we all hate it. Yet America produces more garbage per person than any other country on the planet. 230 million tons each year. That's heavier than 2,000 fully loaded Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. It's up to landfills to make the bulk of this mega mess disappear. And when it comes to mega, no landfill is bigger or busier than California's Puente Hills, America's largest active mega dump.
This landfill site has 100 million tons buried in place, so it's a big operation.
Just 16 miles outside Los Angeles, this megastructure covers 1,400 acres, including the dump site, the materials recovery facility, and the power plant. Each day, it consumes over 13,000 tons of municipal waste, nearly 900 tons of asphalt, more than 100,000 tons of green waste, and 700 tons of ash. There's enough garbage delivered here to fill the Rose Bowl in just 13 days. And the sights, sounds, and smells?
Stick your head in your garbage can and find out exactly how our cities would smell without these kinds of sites.
The challenge is to handle this much mess safely, and the stakes couldn't be higher. A landfill this size is a melting pot of toxic chemicals and disease. One minor mistake could pollute the groundwater and poison local communities for years to come. Here, everyday household products such as batteries, pesticides, and nail polish turn into potentially lethal cocktails.
This is a almost totally full can of paint thinner. You don't want to have to drink that.
"6 a.m. The gates to Puente Hills open. The race to get rid of LA County's waste begins as hundreds of massive big rigs arrive to drop off their messy payload.
You watch the traffic controllers, they look like conductors at a concert.
Their destination? The dump site, and a target location called the cell. This football field-sized patch of ground is the fundamental building block of a mega dump. Throughout the day, every hour, another 1,000 tons of garbage is dumped until they meet the maximum 13,200-ton limit. The objective? Smash, crunch, and cram everything into this cell until it hits capacity. It may look like chaos, but to cram all this waste into the daily cell takes planning. Here's how they do it. Trucks dump garbage in rows of piles. Next, dozers push the trash into the cell. But to maximize space, they need to minimize the garbage by compacting it.
The big problem with landfills is that they're closing down, and they're closing down because they're full. It's volume that really matters.
The solution? The BOMAG compactor. Weighing in at 120,000 pounds, this mega machine's got a 536 horsepower engine. At 14 feet tall and 30 feet long, you can't miss this heavyweight in a crowd. 4 7-foot steel wheels provide the compacting strength, but the huge 17-foot leveling blade packs its own punch. 99,000 pounds of pushing power. Michael Spizer's been enjoying a wild ride on this beast for 7 years.
It's just a really fun job to me all day long because you get to do some things that most people that would scare them to death.
Everything about this monster is designed to squash garbage. With a crushing force of 1,100 pounds per square yard, it makes a big impression.
Its main function is to compact the rubbish, basically so we can put more rubbish in the same area.
The key to its mashing might? 4 55-inch wheels with 72 steel teeth. Their shape provides the critical compacting force. When they come into contact with the garbage, they apply that power in all directions, to the sides and below the tooth tip. In just 2 overlapping passes, this heavyweight can crush an area more than 22 feet wide. And maneuverability? This bad boy's got that too.
Because this swivels right in the middle, it turns really sharp. And also the front end will turn opposite like this. It'll articulate in that way, so it makes it really turn sharp at times.
And working on the dump face, you need all the maneuverability you can get. There are dozers, scrapers, and compactors at every turn. Add a couple hundred dump trucks, and you have an accident waiting to happen.
You can run into somebody or they can run into you. And that's the main thing. You just have to keep your eyes open at all times.
But what really chills the blood of these drivers isn't the crashes. It's what everyone calls the drop-off. As trash builds up within the cell, it forms a thick layer above the ground. To smooth the edges and grade the slope, dozers and compactors must go over the edge.
The rush that you get coming off of a new cut that's 100 feet high and just bailing over and coming down, that's a rush.
It's a rush that can turn deadly. Dozer driver Leslie Green remembers his duel with the drop-off.
I was a little too close to the edge, and the edge gave way. And I knew, I couldn't stop. I knew I was going down. But I was thinking, was I gonna die or if I was gonna get hurt?
But thinking quickly, Leslie dropped his large blade, forcing it into the garbage, turning it into a super brake.
I knew I was going over. I couldn't stop. Then I grabbed some trash, and that's what stopped me.
Luckily for these drivers, it's not all risky maneuvers and near misses. Once the compactors have safely compressed the garbage, the dozers take control. At 145,000 pounds, with a 580 horsepower engine, these mega machines are 10 feet tall and 24 feet long. Designed to move and sculpt trash, 6 hydraulic arms control the 17-foot front blade. And forget wheels, this Goliath moves on tracks.
Tracks are made to dig, to stick, like if you're going up a hill, well, wheels wouldn't do it. They would spin.
Dozers are the Michelangelos of garbage as they sculpt and form the trash. Their objective, ensure that when the next rain falls, the top deck drains evenly towards the megadump's main drain.
The way this blade's built, it helps pick the trash up off the ground when you do push it to carry it along. So you can get it to where you actually need it.
How do they determine the precise shape of the cell? Before the day's dumping even begins, engineers calculate the height and gradient of it. They load the information into a laser. The laser is set up at a control point and the beam is directed across the deck. Through the day, as the cell develops, engineers check and double-check the height and gradients against the control beam.
This instrument will beep when it's level with the laser emitted from this machine.
Depending on the results, the dozers and compactors lower or raise the height of the cell. As the cell nears completion, the drivers check the grade themselves and then make final tweaks by adding or removing garbage until the cell is squared away. But there's still one more challenge in this megadump cell cycle: seagulls. These scavengers flock to the dump for a free meal. The problem? They fly off with food waste and drop it on nearby residential areas. Here, rotting food creates odors, attracts disease-carrying flies, and can even spread salmonella, a potentially deadly bacteria.
Seagulls in landfill sites are sort of notorious because seagulls have a tendency to pick stuff up, fly around, and fight over it, and then they drop it.
So how do you fight these pests? It's a 3-stage battle plan. Step 1, noise. Landfill staff fire miniature flares into the air. The idea is to keep the gulls moving. Step 2, bird lines. Each day, teams of workers move bird poles to the new cell area. Then they stretch nylon line between the poles across the face of the dump. As these lines crisscross each other, they form a gull barrier.
And we're still not quite sure why. They do not like flying under these wires. They're only 50 or 75 feet apart, and the seagulls won't fly underneath them.
And the final solution to the seagull invasion? Cover it. This is the job of the biggest mega machine of them all, the scraper. This Goliath packs a double punch. 2 engines, 605 horsepower driving the front and 440 driving the back. That's more than 2 Dodge Vipers. At 53 feet long and 16 feet high and a whopping 155,000 pounds, these giants are the largest mega machines of the landfill. Their wheels alone are 9 feet tall. Scrapers are the ultimate dirt-moving machine, and these monsters work in packs. In just one cycle, they can collect, deliver, and unload 52 tons of soil. And the secret to their smashing success? The hopper, a large bucket that sits between the 2 engines. This mega container scoops up and deposits dirt. Here's how it's done. When the scraper drives forward, the operator lowers the hopper and the front edge scoops up the soil until it's full. When the scraper returns to the cell, the driver hydraulically activates the back panel, which is pushed forward, forcing the soil out. Covering also prevents many other problems.
If you don't get it adequately buried by compacting it properly and then putting the dirt over the top, you do get the problems that used to happen in old dumps, which is you could get rats breeding in that material, you could have a fire start, and you'd have odors and flame coming out of there.
8 a.m., Puente Hills Landfill, California. It's peak rush hour, the busiest time of day. Hundreds of trucks swarm over the dump site. So far, Puente Hills has been filled with 100 million tons of garbage, and it's growing by the second. But what's inside these piles of garbage? To understand their messy makeup, we need to take a trip to Trash Production's Ground Zero, the home. On average, a family of 4 in Los Angeles County produces 24 pounds of garbage. Not a month or even a week, but every single day. A good portion of consumer waste is recycled, but about 50% of the paper, cans, and plastic bottles still end up in the dump. The trash falls into 5 categories. Containers and packaging. That's cans, bottles, and last night's pizza box. Non-durable consumer goods, like newspapers, magazines, the torn t-shirt, and smelly diapers. Durable consumer goods, or white waste, tends to be bulky, like washing machines and grandma's old sofa, so they won't fit into the trash can. Yard or green waste, the potted plant you forgot to water, a dead bunch of flowers, grass clippings, and even dirt. And finally, food waste. It's what you didn't eat for dinner, or the mysterious green goop in the back of your refrigerator.
The end consumer in our society is mainly the individual at home.
How do all these wrappers, cans, and plastic bags get from the house to the landfill? It's a journey that begins with curbside collection. Los Angeles County, 5:30 a.m. These men have a tough day ahead. Bad traffic, tight parking, and the quick tempers of the morning commuters.
Well, when they're behind you and they get frustrated and they'll come pull up alongside of me, honk their horn, and then they'll give me a gesture. And some yell at me and tell me to get the heck out of the way, but in a different word.
Jerry Lizarraga has been on the job for 21 years. He knows the drill. A 10-hour shift, covering 80 miles, picking up 200 dumpsters. To beat the clock, dump truck drivers turn to technology. Today's dump trucks are designed for speed and efficiency. This garbage-guzzling mega machine has got height, weight, and strength. Weighing in at 19,000 pounds with a 230 horsepower engine, it's 10 feet tall and 34 feet long. But this mega truck's strength is in its arms. These boys can bench press 8,000 pounds. Outside an apartment building, Jerry maneuvers his truck into position and lowers the front-mounted prongs. They're his winning weapons. Once aligned, it takes just 20 seconds to lift and tip the garbage into the back of the truck. Here, over 1,000 pounds of pressure compacts the trash. Even in a truck, it can still be a dirty job.
Some places is pretty tidy when we get to it. The bins are, everything's nice and neat. And there's other places we go to, we just have to clean up and pick it all up to get the container out before we could dump it.
After spending 6 hours on the road picking up 150 dumpsters, Jerry must race to Puente Hills. It has the lowest dumping fees in the county, about $24 a ton, making it the first choice of most garbage companies. But there's a catch. Puente Hills has a daily limit on municipal waste, 13,200 tons, and when the limit's met, the gates close. Once the trucks make the entrance to Puente Hills mega dump, they drive onto scales. Here, the weigh station staff calculates the landfill fees based upon the weight of the garbage and other fees. While on the scales, a small radioactive monitoring device, a gamma centimeter, checks the load for radioactive waste, usually medical trash. Each monitor can pick up tiny amounts, levels so low that it is considered virtually harmless. Still, if workers find anything, it's safely eliminated. All this ensures that radioactive material never accumulates in the landfill. Next, the dump trucks make the short trek to the dump site. Jerry maneuvers into position. 2 hydraulic cylinders raise the body, and gravity does the rest. Designed for a quick turnaround, it takes him just about 20 seconds to dump a load. And almost instantly, it vanishes forever. Each day at the Puente Hills mega dump, hundreds of trucks deposit a volatile mix of trash. So far, there's 100 million tons, stacked 20 stories high. Until 1987, no one knew what secrets lay trapped within landfills like this, or what happened to the garbage once it was buried. Then archaeologist Bill Rathje began investigating. Today, Bill's a consulting professor at Stanford University. Known as the Indiana Jones of landfills, he's elevated the study of trash to an academic discipline called garbology.
They're such an unknown. Before we started digging, nobody knew what was down there.
In 1989, Bill took on the biggest, nastiest dump of them all, the Fresh Kills landfill on Staten Island in New York City. A sprawling 3,000 acres, 100 million tons of garbage stacked 155 feet high. That's taller than the Statue of Liberty. His aim? Uncover the behavior and habits of New Yorkers by analyzing their garbage.
It's about digging up this artifact world and learning what produced it, the behavior, the ideas, the beliefs, the people that generated all this garbage.
Bill and the Garbage Project used a bucket auger to plunge into the garbage and take a sample. The deeper they dug, the older the garbage. Next, they meticulously recorded and analyzed every scrap of garbage. His findings? It appears we are what we throw away.
And hot dog.
You can tell a lot about what people are doing and thinking and behaving by comparing what they say with material remains.
While people report one thing in lifestyle and behavior surveys, Bill found their garbage painted a very different picture. For example, people tend to over-report consumption of healthy foods, like fruits and vegetables, but under-report their more unhealthy habits.
We find a tremendous number of alcohol containers compared to what you might expect based on what people say they drink.
But Bill's most startling discovery came by accident. A 36-year-old item nearly perfectly preserved.
One of the student sorters brought his roommate, who didn't believe that the guy was actually sorting garbage. And he started wandering around looking at the plastic boxes that we had. And he said, "Hey, there's a newspaper in here.
British front section.
And you can date it and read it."
Daily News.
Why, this was supposed to biodegrade. What happened? And then just about all at once, 30 people went, "Of course, biodegradation. It's not biodegrading."
Until that moment, we thought that in landfills, garbage decomposed. It turns out the lack of oxygen deep inside slows decomposition to a snail's pace. Surprisingly, landfills are not vast composters. They're vast mummifiers. What does this mean for Puente Hills today? Well, with no biodegradation, this landfill will not get any smaller. The faster dump trucks bring the garbage, the faster it will fill up and close. The key is to make landfills last as long as possible. The solution? Minimize the amount of new garbage by creating a recycling megastructure.
We're digging for resources out of this material that comes into our site. We're kind of resource farmers. That's our job. And if the public didn't do enough at their end with recycling, we've got to take over at this end and recycle as much as possible.
Puente Hills has some amazing recycling mega machines. Ever wonder what happens to discarded Christmas trees? How about all those dead shrubs and yard waste? At Puente Hills Green Waste Recycling Area, they all face the mighty mashing power of the Magnum Force wood grinder. It all starts with the push of a button, and the 1,050 horsepower engine revs into action. This beast can handle up to 200 tons per hour. To keep pace, excavator operators use a grapple to pick up and dump large piles of green waste onto the grinder's conveyor. This feeds the hog chamber. Here, 24 rotating hammers with cutting tips break everything into chips. The result? A neat pile of mulch. Afterwards, a wheel loader with a special front attachment called a horizontal auger mixes the mulch with dirt and spreads it over a flat surface area, making it easier for the scrapers to scoop the material up at the end of the day. Dirt and mulch is collected by the scrapers and used as cover for the landfill site.
Green waste, in its own way, is kind of a green resource.
But not everything can be ground up or shredded. Each day, Puente Hills receives 21 tons of refrigerators, heaters, air conditioners, and other appliances. Called white waste, they take up space, and many contain harmful chemicals. The solution? Keep them out of the landfill by salvaging the metal.
But 90% of it goes back to some kind of recycle. So instead of, in the old days, that stuff might end up in a landfill site, and stuff goes around again as a product.
Tires are another landfill challenge. Up to 230 tons gets dumped at Puente Hills each day.
The tires is probably the biggest challenge because in California, you can't dispose of whole tires. A tire takes up a lot of airspace. They tend to compact and then spring right back into their original shape.
This machine provides the solution, the tire shredder. A series of oscillating cutting edges move back and forth in opposite directions, slicing the tires into strips. These can be used as additional cover for the landfill or road base. That takes care of recycling on the dump site. But a short distance away, there's a recycling megastructure, the Puente Hills Material Recovery Facility. Size alone makes this building a recycling monster. 3 747s could park in here with only the tops of their tails sticking out. Its job? To take pre-screened commercial waste and recycle it.
The overall site recycles about 1 million tons a year of materials.
The material recycling facility has a huge appetite. It's designed to handle up to 4,000 tons of waste a day. How do they do it? First, workers pick through bulky items like woods, scrap metal, carpet, and concrete, and put them aside for scrap dealers. That leaves a mass of messy, mixed waste, which is moved to the belt processing area. Here, 5 rows of rotating discs mechanically pre-sort and eliminate any large pieces of cardboard. The separated cardboard is then fed into a baler. An unruly mess goes in. A neat compressed bale of cardboard comes out. Cardboard is highly valued by paper manufacturers. The paper fibers are long and strong. That means it can be recycled many times. Better yet, 1 ton of paper saves 17 trees. Separating the leftover mixed waste is trickier. It takes human power. The mixed waste rushes past teams of pickers. These workers must have quick hands and quick eyes.
Well, we have each person standing there, so each person takes care of grabbing something, getting something out of the line. Like one person gets plastic, the other person gets white paper, the other person gets mixed paper, the other person gets cardboard, the other newspaper, and the other one gets mixed paper.
As garbage speeds by, teams of pickers sort the paper, plastics, and metal into individual bins. And when it's all accumulated, it's baled together and sold to manufacturers for recycling. All these bales, all these piles have been diverted from the landfill. Instead of taking up space, they'll have a second life. More importantly, recycling will save raw materials for the future.
Now it's up to us now to get this decadent mindset where we're going to recycle, reuse, and reduce before our resources are cut off so that we'll survive longer at the level of lifestyle that we become used to.
Puente Hills Landfill, California, America's largest active dump. From open to close, every hour, over 2,000 tons of garbage hits the landfill floor. Each load contains a deadly cocktail of chemicals, from cleaning products to pesticides and battery acid.
Here we have nail polish, and this has 3 or 4 ingredients in it that are on the EPA's acute toxic list. And these are the kinds of things, again, it doesn't hurt you to put them on your fingernails, but you wouldn't want to drink it.
Inside the landfill, bottles break and cans rip apart. Chemicals mix together to form a toxic garbage juice called leachate. If this poisonous goop escapes into the drinking water of local communities, the results could be poisonous, carcinogenic, and possibly deadly. Each garbage load has a unique combination of chemicals. Like an uncontrolled experiment, they mix in strange combinations and quantities. The results are unpredictable.
Nobody knows how many people would get sick or how they would get sick or whatever else, because nobody knows exactly what's in that leachate.
The challenge is to make sure this toxic leachate never gets into the groundwater. Puente Hills has a 2-point battle plan. 1. Create a mega barrier. 2. Constant monitoring.
Felt like we had sample. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay.
Protecting groundwater is crucially important in the Los Angeles region. We get a big part of our water supply in Los Angeles from groundwater tables.
Creating a barrier begins at ground level when the dump is built. First, construction workers dig out the shape and design of the operating area. Next, they cover the walls and floors with alternating layers of clay, sand, and drainage material. The final step, wrap the dump in plastic. This is the landfill's armor, 80 mil of polyethylene plastic. That's 80 thousandths of an inch thick.
The liner material is a very heavy plastic. It's not quite as thick as my little finger, but it's pretty heavy material, and it would take a lot to punch through it.
Engineers then lay 17 miles of perforated pipe at the bottom of the dump. These will collect any water that enters the landfill and pump it to a water treatment plant, where they will remove any toxins from the liquid.
If it's been through a cleansing process, which is something like your sewage water goes through, I've been at landfills where they've served me coffee that has been brewed with the leachate.
The liner system is the main barrier between the garbage and the water table. But Puente Hills has another line of defense, the leachate monitors. Each day, they take samples from inside and outside the landfill. If there's a problem, these teams will pick it up.
We're checking to make sure that anything on the inside of the landfill is not escaping to outside.
Engineering technician Helen Francis Beda and her colleague draw a sample from a leachate collection sump below the surface.
All right, it's full this time.
Next, they test the groundwater outside the landfill. If both contain the same chemicals, a red flag goes up. The liner may be leaking. It's every landfill operator's nightmare.
You don't want to have to deal with it, because the only way to deal with it and clean it up is to dig up the whole area and put it through some processors. You're talking tens of millions of dollars.
Here at the Puente Hills Mega Dump, there's another landfill hazard that also needs monitoring: landfill gas. It all begins deep in the piles of garbage. Here, when organic materials decompose, they can create a mixture of methane and carbon dioxide, with explosive consequences for people living near the dump.
There are many, many horror stories about methane from a landfill somehow migrating to a house, to a basement, and some guy goes down in the basement and flicks his lighter and there's a big explosion.
A mega dump like this can produce landfill gas in huge quantities, 40 million cubic feet each day. That's enough to inflate 200 Goodyear blimps. But this toxic cloud has a silver lining. Puente Hills uses the explosive power of landfill methane gas to produce enough electricity to power 100,000 homes.
I really think that methane is a tremendous plus because it is really one of the very, very few byproducts from all of this otherwise waste that can be utilized.
The trick is how to capture it. Puente Hills has the answer. Strip away the garbage and uncover an amazing gas recovery system. 80 miles of header pipes, 1,400 gas wells, and 75 miles of horizontal trench pipes. Puente Hills was the first landfill to bury pipes along the surface of the garbage. It's a revolutionary system designed to increase gas extraction. But first, engineers had to overcome a tricky problem. The pipes kept breaking. Garbage is unstable. It settles over time. Bury normal pipes in this shifting mass and they will break. Engineers came up with a simple yet effective solution. It starts with two pipes of different diameters. The smaller pipe is sleeved within the larger pipe. The gap between the two pipes makes them flexible. It also allows for the flow of methane into the pipes. How do you keep the gaps from clogging up with garbage? The pipes are placed in the trench and surrounded by gravel. This will keep the gap between the pipes free of garbage. Blowers create a slight vacuum in the piping system. The vacuum creates suction, pulling the methane into the pipe.
It's a fairly light vacuum. It's a small percentage of 1 atmosphere. So if you punched a hole in the side of this, you'd hear a hissing sound as the air went in.
The methane is then piped to the landfill gas-to-energy power plant. This is one of the biggest, cleanest-burning landfill gas power plants in the world. First, a condenser removes any moisture. Then, 2 boilers burn the methane to create steam, a bit like boiling a pot on the stove. The steam drives a turbine, which spins a generator. The result? 50 megawatts of electricity, enough to power 100,000 homes.
It is a renewable resource in the sense that garbage is going to keep coming out and methane will keep coming out of that. We're in really good shape to get a lot of our energy from what we've wasted in the past.
Puente Hills takes the energy produced from garbage one step further. It was the first landfill in America to produce vehicle fuel from landfill gas. This maze of pipes, compressors, and membrane skids dewater, purify, and pressurize the methane. The result is a high-octane fuel. Each day, Puente Hills produces the equivalent of 1,000 gallons of diesel.
We're tapping the landfill for energy. My ideal, if we could ever have it come to pass, would be the trash truck comes in today, it dumps its trash today, and then it goes over and fills up on yesterday's energy from yesterday's trash.
Even with aggressive recycling techniques, eventually, Puente Hills will be full. Then this megastructure will begin its final journey from landfill to landscape.
It will be park. It's going to be hiking trails, horseback riding, and biking trails and things like that.
According to garbologist Bill Rathjay, all landfills deserve a second life. And what they will become is limited only by our imaginations.
There are some landfills that have been turned into art, where they've been shaped like things, you know, like Big Bird or a mammoth or something. So it's just our imagination that limits what they'll become.
So how do you close a landfill and protect local communities from the toxic garbage inside? It begins with a process called capping.
Capping landfills isn't like the old day where you just got a bulldozer and pushed a pile of dirt over it and called it a day.
Capping is a carefully engineered process. It seals the landfill from the groundwater in nearby residents, a bit like putting a lid on a pot. 9 miles to the south of Puente Hills, the BKK landfill is being capped. One day, this will be a golf course, but there is a long way to go. 15 months of engineering, sculpting, and covering. And engineers can't afford to make a mistake. The health of nearby residents is at risk.
Landfills that don't have adequate caps will have lots of people calling in odor complaints. And people calling in saying they're getting sick from breathing in, toxic gases and things from landfills.
The main aim of capping is to keep rain out of the landfill. The more water, the greater the chance of toxic garbage juice seeping into the water table. Water also increases methane production. It can have explosive consequences, as a concert goer at an amphitheater built on an old landfill found out.
First concert or second concert, some guy in the back flicked his Bic to light a cigarette and lit about an 8-foot flame, which burned the hair off of the back of the lady in front of him.
Capping at BKK has an additional challenge. The landfill is a mix of ordinary municipal garbage and hazardous waste.
Of course, the landfill didn't take radioactives or PCB type waste, but pretty much any other kinds of commercial hazardous materials and waste that you can think of are in that landfill. So you obviously don't want things like acids or solvents running down city streets. You don't want them getting into your groundwater, for example, and you don't want things like that evaporating in neighborhoods and people breathing it in.
Parts of this site are already battling major environmental problems. Built before landfill liners and toxic waste regulations, leachate is leaking into the groundwater. The capping process must prevent any further harm.
There is groundwater contamination from the landfill, and that continues to be monitored, and EPA is finalizing their plans on how to stop that contamination, how to clean it up.
Today, landfills must conform to strict standards and regulations. The capping process has been designed for maximum protection. First, a 2-foot layer of soil is dumped on top of the garbage and compacted. Next, a foot of clay. This will form a watertight layer and prevent any water from seeping into the landfill. Once it's compacted, the entire surface is tested. First, to see if it's stable, and then to measure the moisture content. Both ensure that the clay layer will remain stable.
Well, if you're not checking compaction and moisture content and things like that later down the road, you'll start to see things like slopes and stuff start to crumble and fall off, or erosion washing out certain areas, or even a lot more settlement due to not putting the soils in correctly.
The final step is a layer of vegetative soil.
In this case, is a BKK 7.5 feet thick, so that in the future we can plant trees and shrubs and things to not make it look like a landfill anymore.
Eventually, Puente Hills will undergo the same capping process. But what will happen to the tons of garbage being disposed by Americans each day? It's a major problem. Building another dump in LA County is not an option.
We're simply running out of space. We've got houses everywhere. We are just chock-a-block. There's no good place to put it anywhere near the urban environment anymore.
Puente Hills has an ambitious solution: waste by rail.
You haul trash off in container cars on railroad trains to a distant location outside the urban environment. An area where we can, in fact, bury the trash out there, be away from people.
The idea is to build a landfill that will dwarf even Puente Hills. It will receive 20,000 tons a day, 1.5 times more than Puente Hills' daily limit. With a 600 million ton capacity, this mega dump will be operating for the next 100 years. How will the system work? It all revolves around the material recovery facility. Incoming garbage will be dumped and sorted, with the emphasis on recycling.
When you haul it farther, it costs more, and so the incentive to recycle some of that stuff goes up higher, because it's costly to get rid of it.
The leftover waste will be loaded onto trucks through 6 loadout bays. In a 7-hour shift, each loadout bay can handle 3,500 tons of trash. Garbage trucks then haul the waste to a rail facility. Full containers will be loaded onto the train, and empty containers offloaded in tandem. Rail cars then transport the trash to the landfill site where it's dumped. Is dumping out of sight and out of mind the solution to America's garbage problems? Landfills are controversial. No one wants a landfill in their backyard. And many feel that the environmental protection systems will fail. But Bill Rathje says the real problem is lifestyle.
The well-run landfill is the second best solution to our garbage dilemma. The best solution is not to make the garbage in the first place, is source reduction. And that's probably the most difficult thing for any American to imagine, because using less stuff, which is what source reduction is about, is for most people a nightmare.
Garbage is not about to go away anytime soon. With an amazing mix of science, technology, and sheer horsepower, Puente Hills can take on massive amounts of trash while protecting us from hazardous waste. When it comes to garbage-busting muscle, this megastructure wins, hands down.